Flux is a game that changes the player's understanding of one conflict as the player pilots different perspectives. It is not always a battle between good and evil. Our team is eager to design Flux, a single-player real-time strategy game built for the PC. Flux is set in the distant future where the warring survival of three factions takes place. With its story campaign, Flux stands out from any other title in its genre. Instead of witnessing a tale of good versus evil, the player will take part in the war through the command of each faction. The player will uncover their histories, adopt their motives, and endure their fates. The game is about the power struggle between three factions: the humans, their former scouting units who have been nicknamed Noras, and an indigenous alien race known as the Argites. As the game progresses through a linear storyline separated into 3 chapters, the player will command each faction in turn. This design allows our team to showcase each faction's full backstory and motives. Our goal is to gain the player's empathy for each faction as they fight their way to victory. We chose to design Flux as a real-time strategy game because we want to emphasize the conflict between each faction while delivering the player a sense of urgency. This genre fits our design goal perfectly and gives us the opportunity to design handcrafted battle scenarios while featuring varied types of units. Designing for this genre delivers the perfect emotional responses of stress and excitement that we aim for. Through Flux's art direction, our team aims to showcase the aesthetic differences between each faction without damaging the player's immersion. We will achieve this through a realistic modeling scheme coupled with a melodramatic and cool color palette that will gently infuse reality with fantasy. Drastic changes in art styles can be jarring, so we are focusing on unique user interface and heads-up display designs for each faction. The human faction will have a more relatable look and feel by using visual elements derived from the inside of a vehicle's cockpit. Meanwhile, the Nora will have a more synthetic and mechanical design similar to H.R. Geiger's artwork that is depicted in the Alien movie series. The Argites will have an organic look for their menus that depict a more natural and organic theme. While the UI and HUD designs will be different between factions, our team will implement a cohesive art style for Flux's assets, units, structures, and environments that will provide the player with adequate visual variation while remaining ultimately cohesive for a more fulfilling gameplay experience. Flux's audio will be designed using Audiokinetic's WISE in order to develop a rich and authentic audio experience. All 3 factions will exhibit unique audio tracks that will reveal to the player the culture, history, and style of each faction. The audio for the human faction will receive orchestral influences that will express this faction's combative and desperate culture. Although the Nora faction are androids built by the humans, their audio will demonstrate their synthetic nature through science fiction influences from titles like Mass Effect and Stellaris. The Argites' audio will demonstrate their native culture through organic instrumentation, much like the audio from the title Far Cry Primal. The humans have long since depleted their homeworld of all its resources, and they have become nomadic spacefarers. Their vast fleet is on its last leg, and they have become desperate to find a new home. The humans have created reconnaissance androids, known as the Noras, to search for a planet that can support human life. After several years, they finally received a transmission from their last Nora unit signaling that it had found a life-bearing planet several light years away. By the time the humans had touched ground, they found that the Noras had taken over the entire planet and had become aggressive. Number 23321 Reconnaissance Android was humanity's final scouting unit. Her unit class was designed with self-awareness for heightened survival instincts during planetary explorations. Unexpectedly, Nora 23321 began to form bonds with the other Nora units, often calling each other sisters. After arriving on the planet, Nora 23321 discovered that many of her sisters had crash-landed before her. However, she was the only one to survive. Enraged, she repaired the other Noras in order to band together and claim the planet as their own. By the time the humans arrived, the Noras would be ready to defend their new home from their old creators. The Argites are a native reptilian race that shares a symbiotic relationship with the planet's flora and fauna. Because of this, they view themselves as the planet's caretakers. Compassionate, the Argites took pity on the Noras after witnessing unit after unit die upon crash landing into the planet's surface. They warmly welcomed the Noras to their lush home. However, the Norse quickly began an aggressive expansion that destroyed many of the Argites' natural habitats, putting an ultimate strain on their relations. Like many other RTS games, Flux requires the player to gather and manage resources, build or upgrade units and structures, and command units to attack or defend during combat. What makes Flux unique is the mechanical differences between the three factions. Each faction is designed with different unit command styles and resource gathering systems that pose new challenges while offering the player numerous gameplay strategies. The player will begin the first chapter of Flux by commanding the Nora. Nora gather resources in two ways. One is by creating collection structures over natural resources that will deplete these sources over time. Another is by recycling and salvaging the resources from down-friendly units and structures using a builder-type unit. With enough resources collected, the player will be able to build or upgrade the various Nora structures and units. Our team has designed the Nora faction as a flexible playstyle through its various defensive and offensive structures and units. Offensively, the Nora's combat units are centered around strong grouping. These groups are composed of units that serve specific purposes. Players will be given a vast selection of units that have a single attack or defense ability, with both ground and air unit accessibility and either direct damage or area of effect. Players will have seemingly unlimited number of strategies with which to approach combat. By giving the player this flexibility, we allow the player to make meaningful decisions that will greatly affect their demonstration of tactical dominance. In Chapter 2, the player will continue the campaign from the Argites' perspective. When playing the Argites, the player will gather resources strictly from the environment. Due to the Argites' symbiotic relationship with their environment, their collection system does not deplete the sources. However, this collection process is dramatically slower than other factions. This design encourages a slow approach to combat and expansion. During combat, the Argites employ single hero-style units that are environmentally dependent. What this means is that these units receive special abilities from their environment while also impacting foreign environments. While playing the Argite forces, the player will need to be aware of the Argite environmental zones. In order to build additional structures, collect resources, or receive combat boosts, these actions must take place on the appropriate environmental zone. For example, when hero units encounter enemies while on the environmental zone, they will be able to use upgraded attacks and various abilities such as damage over time attacks or area of effect debuffs. In addition, the Argites' environmental zones will grow as they continue to expand their forces and structures. This design delivers to the player an added level of complexity that requires the player to manage their forces and structures more strategically. In the third chapter, the player will complete the campaign from the command of the human forces. For their mechanical design, we have blended together both the combat and resource gathering elements. For each mission played as the human faction, the player will start with an allowance of resources. This allowance will offer the player a unique advantage over their enemy in the beginning of every mission with the ability to deploy units and structures immediately. However, in order to acquire additional resources, the player will need to destroy enemy units and structures to steal their resource value. Knowing this, the player will need to plan every offensive engagement accordingly. The human's offensive design revolves around its multi-purpose units that are heavily armed, fully equipped, and largely expensive, meaning they are equipped for all enemy forces but are expensive to reproduce. These units will be equipped with multiple abilities that keep them prepared for almost every combat scenario, anywhere from surgical anti-air strikes to massive AoE ground attacks. Though the human strength does not rely on numbers, each unit will be costly to replace. This design will stress the player's combat efficiency and resource strategy as they progress through each mission.